Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Carly P. Riley Show. If you have seen recent headlines about the FTX bankruptcy, you are likely under the impression that things are going quite well. Most headlines tell you that FTX customers will make all of their money back. FTX customers are going to be paid back in full. FTX customers are going to be paid back plus interest. These are the kinds of things that we have been seeing in the news lately. But if you are watching this show, you likely know that that is not entirely true. And it is not entirely true. In fact, it is arguably not true at all for a couple reasons. The first is FTX customers are not really getting all of their money back. Now, to some extent, you probably know what I'm going to say here. Some of this has been covered in the news. But the second reason this headline really isn't true is because it implies that the current bankruptcy is going very well, that this thing has been well managed, that the lawyers and bureaucrats that are running FTX are doing a great job preserving value, creating value, and redistributing that back to the customers. And that, to me, is actually the much more insidious, dangerous falsehood. I have said before on this show, I am so interested in the FTX bankruptcy because I think it is demonstrative of the ways that regular people, everyday folks, are hurt, manipulated, screwed over, frankly, by wealthy and well-connected insiders who are able to bend rules, change rules, do things behind the scenes in very unobvious ways that benefit themselves and hurt the little guys. And that stands in stark contrast to something like a Sam Bankman-Fried situation where that blew up in all of our faces in a big, loud, noisy, chaotic way. We all knew we had been screwed in that situation, but I think this bankruptcy actually is screwing people in ways that are much subtler and for that reason actually much more important to talk about. And so once again, that is what we're going to talk about today, which is this recent reorganization plan by the FTX bankruptcy estate, which has led to all of these headlines about how great everything is going and why they are really not what they seem to be. All right, folks, if you are watching the show, you probably know that FTX customers are not getting 100% of their money back. If you held one Bitcoin at the time of the FTX collapse, it was worth about $17,000, and what you will receive back as part of this bankruptcy is $17,000 plus some interest. But that is a far cry from the $62,000 that Bitcoin is currently trading at today. So you have lost $30,000 plus in value in that dynamic. Now, FTX customers have been shouting about this for quite some time, and it is something that is largely understood. I mean, I would say that the news media, even the folks who are running these headlines about customers getting all of their money back, in the fine print, in paragraph 2, 3 in their articles, they usually do mention that this is not a complete, you're not getting your full $60,000 back if you owned a Bitcoin. Now, there's nuances to all of this. The customers would say, hey, we actually owned that cryptocurrency. This is not just us wanting the value of our crypto back for the sake of obviously wanting the most amount of money possible. We actually think we have legal grounds to stand on when we say that we were entitled to the full $60,000 that our cryptocurrency is currently worth because we actually owned that cryptocurrency. The FTX management team has basically just ignored these complaints, has not even just complaints, like has ignored this argument by the creditors. They do give it a nod in this most recent bankruptcy plan that they have released and the disclosure statement that came with it. In the disclosure statement, they sort of say this little hand wavy thing of like, yeah, we know that there's a line in the terms of service that say you own your digital assets, but it's kind of complicated. And on the back end, the systems didn't really allow for that. And we don't actually have the money and blah, 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 blah. Now, all of that is actually fair. It is fair for the bankruptcy estate to say it's actually more complicated. And in the back end, they didn't actually maintain the cryptocurrency and we don't have enough money to actually give you your cryptocurrency as of the current value of it. All of that is a valid perspective. The issue is that they have made that perspective the law in this situation, as opposed to actually going in front of a judge and adjudicating as to what the creditor's rights are insofar as their cryptocurrency holdings are concerned. This really should be something that a court should hear out and determine and make some evaluation on. Well, that's not happening because, again, the priority for this bankruptcy estate, despite what the headlines may make it seem, the priority here is not the customers. It is not the creditors. We see this in the way that they have just papered over and hand-waved over this question of who actually had ownership rights over the cryptocurrency that was deposited onto the exchange. And all of that is important, but it is, like I said, to some degree getting covered in the press today. What I think is not getting covered are the many ways in which this bankruptcy team is destroying value, is not properly running this bankruptcy. And this is not just me saying this. I've spoken with a number of bankruptcy experts, a law professor who specializes in bankruptcy, who has said that this is one of the strangest bankruptcies, specifically said that this is an order of magnitude different, greater in terms of its strangeness than any other bankruptcy or any typical bankruptcy. I am not a conspiracy theorist, but it does not require a conspiracy theorist to understand that if something is this strange, there is a reason for that, and it is a reason that we are not being told. So I want to talk about another part of the disclosure statement that came out as part of this bankruptcy reorganization plan that the debtors, the bankruptcy estate, has put forward. They address FTX 2.0, the exchange that never was. If you haven't been following this, another thing the creditors have long hoped to see happen is the FTX exchange restarted. The thinking here is actually tied to this question of the value of creditors' holdings. The creditors were hoping that while they couldn't be paid back the full total of the value of their cryptocurrency, they could potentially get an equity stake in FTX 2.0 in a restarted FTX exchange, and that could help to compensate them for the value that they have lost in their cryptocurrency. But in January of this year, the FTX management team said that there would be no FTX 2.0. And in this recent disclosure statement as part of this bankruptcy reorganization plan, they elaborated on this. The debtors said that while perhaps on the surface, perhaps to all of us, it looked like FTX was a functioning exchange insofar as it had great name recognition. It had a core user interface that people liked using. Behind the scenes, it was a mess. They specifically write this: the public did not see how the exchange lacked operational systems necessary for sustained viability. The FTX.com exchange was built quickly and managed horribly. At no point in its short lifespan did it have adequate security arrangements for digital assets or cash, regular practices for reconciling digital assets to user positions, reliable accounting systems, reliable books, records, or appropriately trained operational or financial staff, etc., etc. Basically, behind the scenes, this thing was a mess. And this, they say, is why it cannot be restarted, though they are quick to add that they, as the bankruptcy team, have done an exhaustive process, have done everything they could to explore either restarting the exchange or selling the exchange or merging the exchange with another exchange in terms of the customer base, but none of it really made sense. None of it was viable. Now look, I have no doubt that the exchange is very messy and unprofessional on the back end. If that weren't the case, we wouldn't be in this situation to begin with. And yet to simply hand wave away and say, yeah, we know it made $300 to $400 million a year. We know it had this great user interface, but the back end was a mess, so it's completely unstartable. To me, just does not ring true. It does not make any sense to me that there are not people out there with both the resources and the know-how to improve, change, fix the structural problems on the back end while maintaining what was working so well about FTX on the front end and leveraging its incredibly high brand name, even higher now because of this whole scandal, in order to create a really functioning, well-run exchange. I have worked in crypto for years. I know people who have created exchanges, who have built exchanges. It just does not make sense to me that the back-end issues cannot be solved. But what's more, I do not trust, for very good reason, this FTX management team to tell me the truth when it comes to the processes and the evaluations that they have made about any part of this exchange. And I'll tell you why. There was another exchange, FTX EU, the European offshoot of FTX, that this management team also said they intended to sell. Back in December of 2022, so right after the whole exchange collapsed, the debtors, the current FTX management, the bankruptcy estate team said that they wanted to sell FTX EU. They signaled that their intention was to find a buyer for it, offload it, bring in some cash, etc. Now, behind the scenes, they ran some sort of sale process in order to achieve this, but it yielded nothing. And then in July of 2023, 6, 7 months, 8 months after they declared their intention to sell it, They said in a court document that FTX EU was unable to be sold and that it had no value as an asset. And they elaborated on this. I mean, they really went hard on this. They said there's no technology worth anything here. There's nothing about this entire exchange that has any value. It is worthless. That is the upshot of what they said in a court document that they filed in July of 2023. And then fast forward to January of this year, just 4 months ago. The debtor team, the FTX management team, in January of this year, filed a motion to buy FTX EU, the exact same company they said had no value. They attempted to buy it with $6 million of customer money. They wanted the estate, which is all funded with creditor cash. They wanted the estate to buy FTX EU out of Swiss bankruptcy for $6 million. So 7 months after saying it had no value, they're suddenly looking to buy it. And they didn't end up buying it. They actually ended up selling it to another team for $33 million. This asset, they said, that was completely worthless and unable to be sold just 7 months prior. Now, this is a longer story that I will likely get into at some point, but is not for today. But suffice it to say that the 180s that were done over the course of FTX EU are pretty baffling and demonstrate the complete inconsistency of statements that this bankruptcy team makes. They essentially do and say whatever they need to achieve whatever short-term aim they are looking to achieve, with really no regard for either what the truth is or what would be best for customers and creditors. So when they say that FTX 2.0 can't be restarted, but that they ran an exhaustive process exploring whether it could be restarted or what the best course of action would be, I'm incredibly skeptical, because they said very similar things about FTX EU. They said, oh, we tried to sell it, it's completely unable to be sold, there's no legitimate bidders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the next thing I know, it's being sold for $33 million. And this, frankly, is the core problem of this entire bankruptcy, and it is my issue with all of these headlines saying that customers are getting 100% of their money back. These headlines saying customers are getting 100% of their money back suggest that there is a really a good process being run, an honorable bankruptcy being run. And the reality is, I think most people who've been paying attention have no trust in the folks who are running this bankruptcy. There's been an unbelievable lack of clarity, lack of consistency, lack of transparency, all of the things you would want to feel that you as a creditor are being put first, being considered first, and that you as the victim are not being re-victimized yet again. I am happy that customers are at least getting 100% of the petition date value of their funds. But I certainly wish that there were any number of parts of this bankruptcy that were going a lot differently, because I think the reality is folks could be getting a hell of a lot more than just that back were things better managed. All right, folks, that is our episode for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, commenting below. And with that, I will see you next time.